Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and today I want to take a look at Marcus Bontempelli. Now, his ownership has gone through the roof after his massive first practice game score, 195 SuperCoach points, and he's absolutely gone nuts in terms of the ownership. I remember looking, because I saw he scored that, and I thought, this would be interesting to see. Let's check his percentage of ownership. And it was 15, and it's already up to 24. So it does show just how people do get influenced from these practice games. And I tend to not judge my premiums or pick my premiums too much at all in terms of their form through the practice games. But what it can give us an indication on is those mid-price types, is those options that we feel may be able to break out, or guys that we just need a bit of confidence. But Bontempelli really put himself on the map. I mean, it was a real take notice game. Practice game or not, he was outstanding and just showed his class. I mean, he's the sort of guy that can kill you with 27 touches, let alone 37. So, but that was a practice game. It was brilliant. Okay, cool. But let's just strip it back a bit and let's assess it on his body of work. Let's have a look at a few numbers, because I'm not selecting him and I haven't thought about selecting him. And there's two of his teammates that I'd select before him. So it's worth thinking about, and I'll tell you some reasons why. If we look at last year from the Bont, let's look at a few age demographic stuff. 127 games. He's 24 years old. Prime of his career. You know, the Dogs just voted him as a captain. You know, he's the man at the kennel. Classy, impact, could play centre-half forward if he wanted, a tall inside mid. He's got it all, there's no doubt about it. But from a SuperCoach point of view, we've seen consistently good averages, but only one really great average, and that was last year. And last year, he really upped his average by a considerable margin, 10 points upon the year before. He brought it up to 114.7. Now, what's really interesting here is because he is in the prime of his career, a lot of people think the Dogs are going to have a really good season. You know, he's in one of the better teams in the competition, arguably the best midfield in the competition. Is last year's 114 average the start of a block of 110 pluses, or is that the outrider? Because I know a lot of people like the golden rule of select a premium who's had multiple premium averages, you know, and that's basically 110 plus in the midfield. We like to pick guys that have done it time and time and time again. Now, Bontempelli, you know, quality opening season, top draft pick, really good, 78.6, and a second season average of 103.2, then 107.7, and the graph was going up. I think we then all thought that 107 was about going to be the basement for his averages from here on out. But then he went 105 and then 104. Now, the Doggies obviously had some down patches in those seasons, but he didn't produce numbers that we probably expected. You know, when he averaged that 107.7, we all thought, well, here we go, Bont's a superstar, get ready to lock and load him in our SuperCoach sides. But he didn't do that. Now, last year, he obviously had some really good games and produced his career best average, but why do I feel he's not a guy that I've warmed to? I definitely like Dunkley a lot. I think he's got some real pig numbers about him, like Tom Rockcliffe style, when he averaged 130. Like, I really think Dunkley just does it all. And McRae's the same, and he's got the runs on the board. The thing with Bont, and it might be Dogs fans that probably know a little bit better, but he's not prolific, and I know he can hurt you with just 25 touches, but he doesn't always. Like, he can have a game of 25 and really hurt you, or he can have a game with 21 and not so much. Now, I'm not sure exactly why that is. I think, if I'm guessing, he doesn't get that much cheap ball. He's not really an accumulator. He's a real every touch counts. And that's a great quality as a footballer, but he's not getting those 5, 6, 7 touches in a little 1-2s. He doesn't get much of that sort of ball. And if we look at some of his numbers, he often is about 50-50 split contested to uncontested possession. And when we saw those averages, those couple of years that were a bit down, 105, 104, his possession count, he averaged 22.9 and 24.1, which isn't that great for a premium midfielder. Now, last year he upped that to 26.4, and that's probably where Bontempelli's going to sit. You know, he's not a Lockie Neal, he's not a Clayton Oliver, he's not going to rack up 32, 33, average those sorts of numbers. He does go forward, and that can sometimes be really good. You know, Bont's kicked, a couple of goals, 14 touches in the first half. But sometimes he can go a bit cold. You know, that's the one concern with those guys who can get pushed forward. Some days it's great, other days it's not. And I feel as if that possession count is probably my main concern. Just having a look at a few of the stats, like you can't question his tackling ability. Clearance numbers are great. It's really just the difference is, I know it's only a couple of possessions, but that's really all it is. If you look at that difference from him averaging 114 to 105, it's about 2.5, 3 touches per game. It doesn't sound much, but it makes sense. You know, those few touches give you an extra 6 to 10 points on any given week. And that's what we'll be looking for from Bontempelli. And, I mean, he couldn't have put a better foot forward in the practice game. You can't argue that. But he's just not a guy I'm going to start with. And I'd encourage people to not get lulled into false sense of security by the 195. Yeah, it's great, but I wouldn't be going too hard on the 195. I do see him averaging a really respectable number, but it is hard to predict because I'm just not too sure. Like, I think Bontempelli is one of the best players in the competition, but he has been one of those guys for a while now, and it hasn't always equated to elite numbers SuperCoach-wise, which makes you wonder why. And that's all I can really come up with, is that he's not a high possession count guy. What he does is great, but he does have more games where he's in the lower 20s of disposals and just doesn't quite get up there. Doesn't really fill his boots, if you like, as often as maybe some other guys. But as I said off the top, last year's 114 average could be the start of 3 or 4 years where he averages around the 115 mark in the prime of his career. So are you jumping on board thinking he's in his prime now and this is going to be his best footy of his career these next couple of years? Or is he going to drift back to averaging 107, 108, 109? You know, that's good, but you're clearly paying overs for him. And he is a guy who's only averaged more than 110 once. So I know a lot of people's golden rule is to really have a few years behind their back, or behind them in terms of 110 plus. So that's really interesting. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know if you're starting Bont. Let me know if you've jumped on board in the last week since that game. So I'd love to hear from you. But I'll be back soon, talking a bit of structure and taking a look towards the weekend as well. Cheers.